everybody out there in Econ 1B land. Today I'm going to talk about the participation activity for this week looking at firm costs. We started it in class, it's in the slides, but I'm going to go over it one more time here just for all of you. So I've got the form that's on the slides up here now, and so you can see there's the quantity of production, the variable cost, the total cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. And I've added in a column for fixed cost because I think that helps. The other thing that helps if you're having a hard time with this is to go ahead and write down what all of these things are, right? Write down the equations. So things like the fact that total cost is equal to fixed costs plus variable costs. And the same thing is true for the averages, right? Average total cost is equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. And that marginal cost is equal to the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. And so what we're going to do is use all of these relationships and the definitions of these things, right? That average fixed cost is just fixed cost divided by quantity to fill in the chart. And then we'll go ahead and graph the curves. So the first thing we talked about when we went through and looked at this was this idea that if at a quantity of 0, total cost is 50, at a quantity of 0, the variable cost will be 0 because we're not hiring any workers, we're not paying for any materials. And so if variable costs are 0 and total costs are 50, that tells us that our fixed costs are, 50. And that's going to be the same all the way through. Remember, that's why they're called fixed costs. They're fixed in the short run, they can't be changed. Variable costs are going to fluctuate up and down as we increase and decrease production, and variable costs can be changed in the short run. So let's go ahead and fill in the fixed cost column. There we go. And then we want to go through and see what else we can fill in. So a quantity of 0, fixed costs are $50, variable costs are $0, total cost is $50. And there are no averages because we're not going to divide any of these by 0, right? That's mathematically impossible. The next thing we want to look at is a quantity of 1. At a quantity of 1, we have our variable costs here are $10, and that's given. And so then what we can do is find out what total cost is. Total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. So that's going to be $60. And then we can go through, and here average variable cost is already found for us. It's $10 divided by 1. Average total cost is 60 divided by 1, so that checks out that our total cost is correct. And then we need to find average fixed cost, and that's fixed cost divided by quantity, or another $50. The other thing that's already filled in is the marginal cost. And we can think about marginal cost being change in total cost divided by change in quantity. Or if we're going from 1 to 2 to 3 and we're changing quantity by 1, we can just look at how much total cost changes by. So when we go from a quantity of 0 to a quantity of 1, total cost goes up by $10. That's our marginal cost. Make sense? All right. Next, we have a quantity of 2. We already know our fixed cost, variable and total costs are given. So now we just need to find our averages and the marginal cost. So average fixed cost is going to be $50 divided by 2, the average of that fixed cost, right? So 50 divided by 2 is 25. We also have average variable cost, which is just variable cost divided by quantity. That's going to be 15. And then average total cost, which is total cost divided by 2, or $40. Now we can go and calculate the marginal cost. Marginal cost is going to be how much it costs to produce that next unit. Going from 1 to 2, what's the marginal cost, the additional cost associated with producing one more unit? So we look at our total cost and we see, okay, producing 1 costs $60, producing 2 costs $80. So we've seen that cost go up by $20. Our marginal cost is $20. Cool? Yay. All right. So let's keep going. At a quantity of 3, we don't have variable cost or total cost, but we do have the averages. So we can work our way back. We know that our total cost is going to be $50. And here we can see average variable cost is $20. And remember, average variable cost is variable cost divided by quantity. So if we've got an average variable cost of $20 and we've got a quantity of 3, then we just need to solve for variable cost by multiplying 20 by 3. Make sense? So our variable cost here is going to be 20 times 3, or $60. And then if we add our fixed costs and our variable costs up together, we get $110 for our total cost. And we can double check it and say, okay, well, $110 divided by 3, is that $36.66 or 67 cents? It is. Check it on your calculator. That's awesome. That means that we've got the right value for our total cost. Cool? Marginal cost, again, is the cost of producing that 4th unit, increasing production from 3 to 4. And so what we're going to see is that that additional unit takes us from a total cost of $110 to a total cost of $150. So the marginal cost is now $40. So far, so good? All right, let me get rid of that reflection on the whiteboard real quick. Okay, there we go. Almost done. Now we have the quantity of 4. We've got our fixed cost, variable cost, total cost, average fixed cost. We need to find average variable cost. Average variable cost is variable cost divided by quantity. If our variable cost is 100 and our quantity is 4, then our average variable cost is going to be $25. At a quantity of 5, we've got fixed cost of $50, variable cost of $150. So our total cost is 50 plus 150, or 200. And we can find our average total cost by dividing that $200 by 5. 200 divided by 5 is 40. We can also find our average fixed cost. It's going to be $50 divided by a quantity of 5. So again, 50 divided by 5 is 10. And then the last square we need to fill in is the marginal cost of that 5th unit. The 5th unit of production is going to take us from 150 to 200. So it's going to have a marginal cost of $50, right? 200 minus 150 is 50. If it seems like there's a lot of formulas to remember here, think about the fact that what everything is, the names tell us what we're supposed to do. The marginal cost is just the additional cost. How much more does this unit cost than the last unit of production? Average total cost is just total cost averaged out by the quantity. Average variable cost is variable cost averaged by the quantity. Average fixed cost, same, right? So if you can remember what fixed and variable costs are, and that the average just means divide it by the quantity, and that marginal means the next one, it's pretty straightforward. Okay? Cool. The next part we're going to do is, the next part says to, now that you've calculated the cost curves, graph average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost, and see if they behave the way we expect. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and take this down. And graph. And we're going to graph these cost curves in the same general space that we've graphed everything else. Sorry about that. So it's going to be in quantity and price space. Only now, instead of looking at the quantity bought and sold, we're looking at the quantity produced. And instead of looking at the price of a good in the market, we're looking at how much it costs to produce it. And we'll build more into that later when we start to add in more complexity. So I know I'm going to be producing between 1 and 6 units. So I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then my costs go from $10 up to $200, right? Because I have a marginal cost that goes from 10 to 60. Total cost goes from 50 to 260. And but average total cost only goes up to 43, average variable cost only goes up to 35, and average fixed cost is always falling. So I'm going to set my scale to be about, let's say, $60 here. And then that's going to make that 30, and that's 15, and that's 45. And just like when we do supply and demand curves, you want to try and graph these in a way that makes sense for you. And I don't want you to obsess over having them be perfectly accurate, so long as the most important information is conveyed, right? The most important ideas are conveyed. And so we'll look at what those important ideas are as we go through the semester. So the first thing I'm going to graph is average fixed cost. Average fixed cost started at $50, which I'll put as, let's see, right here. And then it went down to $25, which I'll put at right here. And then it went down to $16.75, and then $12.50. And then average fixed cost at 5 was $10. And at 6, it was $8. So that's our average fixed cost curve. Cool? The next thing I want to do is graph my average variable cost curve. Average variable cost started at $10 for the first unit, and then it was $15 for the next unit, $20 for the next one after that, and then at a quantity of 4, average variable cost was $25, and then $30, and then $35. So that's our average variable cost. Next is average total cost. And I like to do these in different colors. You're going to want to be able to keep track of these curves because it's going to become really important. We're going to look at the differences between the average total cost, variable cost, and marginal cost curves. And we're going to get really cool, important things from that. And so I like to use different colors for that reason. Average total cost is going to be $50 higher than average variable cost because remember, variable cost is variable cost and total cost is fixed plus variable. So we're going to start out with average total cost being at $60. And then average total cost drops to $40 at a quantity of 2. And then $36.67 at a quantity of 3. And then $37.50 at a quantity of 4. And then $40 at a quantity of 5. And then $33 at a quantity of 6. So it's going to go. And that's how we're going to always expect average total cost and average variable cost to behave. They're going to have generally the same shape. They're going to get closer together as the quantity increases. And that's because the difference between average total cost and average variable cost is that fixed cost. But average fixed costs are always falling. So the difference between those two curves is always shrinking. Does that kind of make sense? Last cost curve we want to do is the marginal cost curve. That's my favorite. Marginal cost curve is going to generally be rising because of those diminishing returns to scale, the diminishing marginal productivity of labor. Sometimes we'll see marginal costs go down first and then up. In this case, it's not going to happen. In this case, we just see that upward relationship. So we start with, and A note about marginal cost curves. The textbook and some people make a really big deal about graphing marginal cost on the margin. So marginal cost of $10 would be here between 1 and 2. It's not that important to me. If you graph it in the marginal space or you graph it on marginal cost of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth unit, either way is acceptable to me. Okay, so I don't want you to worry too much about that. Do what makes the most sense to you. So marginal cost of the first unit is $10. Marginal cost of the second unit is $20. Marginal cost of the third unit is $30. Marginal cost of the fourth unit is $40. Fifth unit is $50. Sixth unit is $60. There's our marginal cost curve. Cool? That looks about right. It's hard to do, right? These curves take a little bit of practice. It's easier to do it with graph paper. But this is generally how we want the curves to look. We want average fixed cost to be falling, marginal cost rising. And the other thing we're going to learn, the relationship between the average variable and average total cost that I talked about. The other thing we're going to learn as we move on and finish up the slides on Friday is that marginal cost is going to cross average total cost at its minimum. And so marginal cost crosses average total cost at its minimum is something we definitely expect to see. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions about this. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Take care.